Hi, this is the Be Well with Michelle Greenwell podcast. Our heartwarming conversation is designed to lift you on your wellness journey. Grab your cup of tea and enjoy the podcast. What does the new era in dance training look like? How have we shifted from mindset to brain integration, and from training for strength and grace to brain-body connections for wholeness and for well-being? I am joined once again by Mariah-Jane Thies. Thank you for coming back. And we started an amazing conversation just a few episodes back, and we wanted to shine a light on more of the ideas we scratched the surface of, namely the transition of mindset of educators in the dance world who are trying to honor traditional ways of learning and developing an artistic skill, to nurturing the inner spirit of the dancer and the opportunity to thrive as a person. So welcome back, Mariah-Jane. Are you ready for this conversation?
I believe I am. We'll see what you throw at me.
We were just talking about what tea you have planned for today. What have you planned?
Well, first of all, I have my Christmas mug here, or rather one of my sister's Christmas mugs that she said I could safely use. And again, because it's morning, I got to be honest, I didn't get creative and find another one. I'm sticking with my peppermint tea because I find that just so invigorating. And of course, peppermint, Christmas, candy canes, it also feels very right to do that. So here's to waking up and celebrating the season.
Awesome. I love it. All right. And last conversation, we had talked about Golden Serenity tea from the Harmony blends. And that was grounding and being rooted is where we placed that conversation. And so today I moved us towards Island Vitality, which is coming from your heart space into your throat chakra, which is then being able to voice what it is you want to say and to be heard. So, which I think is where this conversation is really heading. It's that empowerment that we've been searching for to be heard with these ideas. And, so this is great. So with this one, it's the affirmation on the package is: be inspired by the power of nature that surrounds you, rest and release into healing. And I was thinking about the dancers who've come before, who've had to heal their bodies, find ways to heal. Also, too, who may have not had the strength and agility they'd wanted, and how this might have been empowering for them. So that one had come forward. Okay, so I want to highlight two herbs for us to get this conversation started. So we are meeting just before the holidays, and cranberry is something that a lot of people will have at this time of year. So it might be in a tea. It might also be as a sauce that usually goes with the turkey, but it might also be in the baking that happens. So what we have with cranberry is the opportunity for gratitude and abundance, and the symbolic meaning of courage, action, love, and abundance. And if we look at the performing artist as a creative soul, these words mean a lot because they're quite vulnerable in their performing opportunities, and also in the classroom setting where you're being picked on and critiqued, and everything needs to be perfect or match somebody else. And so this is a way to actually be empowered through cranberry to learn, to grow, and to perform. And then I connected it to the holy basil leaves. And this herb relaxes the body and the mind and provides a connection to nature that reconnects to the soul's calling. So again, thinking about the depth of the performer and when they get to just shine as the dancer that they really want to be, what does that look like? So as a performer and an artist, this connection is inspiration for exploration, discovery, and then, of course, the ultimate for the performance. So So with that,
yeah, I want to come to your place for tea. None of this chatting on Zoom.
I know, if we only knew ahead of our conversation so I could mail it in time. All right, cheers. And thank you for coming to be a part of the podcast.
Well, thank you for giving me an opportunity to have voice to these ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the empowerment team.
Exactly. Can you tell me, so for those people that might not have heard that first episode, I'm just going to pull some of the ideas in, and I know you're going to be able to expand on them. Can you tell me what inspired you to begin thinking differently about the way that you were teaching dance?
Okay, so I did a little bit of dancing when I was young, sort of the maybe 6 to 10 years old. And at 10, I had a really bad ankle injury, just jumping rope on the playground. Took me out of dance and sent me into the music world for a while. And then at 15, when I got hired as the accompanist at a dance studio, taking over my piano teacher's job, I was like, nope, I'm drawn back to dance. Now, being 15, realizing that I'd missed a lot, I'd missed that 10 to 15-year-old range is pretty important, powerful time in this day and age, not so much back in then, but in this day and age, that's when, all the exams and competitions would have been happening. So I missed out on that. And so at 15, at that point, because I had stopped trusting my body with this ankle stuff, I trusted my mind. And I really, really wanted to make up for lost time because I was such a keener. And so the thing that honestly, probably within the first few months, I think the seeds were planted for me to be the teacher I am now, because if you tell me to do something, I'll do it. And I'll do it, to the 100th degree. And yet a lot of the cues I was being given didn't make sense. And I didn't have a problem asking questions. Because again, it was like, so because I was so ready to use the power of my mind to catch up in my body, I was perhaps having a little bit more of a conversation than a lot of dancers where they just go, okay, feed me, I'll take it. And I was like, yeah, but that didn't make sense. So for example, learning how to do posture where you're pulling your tailbone down so that you have an upright pelvis. But then we're lifting our leg to the back, which requires your pelvis to tilt. And I'd be like, sorry, how am I supposed to pull it down and lift it up at the same time? So if I'm supposed to have strong posture, does the strong posture ideas go right out the window as soon as I have to lift my leg up to the back? I was a bit irritating to my teachers, no doubt. But I was like going, but, because so really it came down to, in the English language, it's when I'm spelling my last name, I often say to people, oh, remember, it's I before E, except after C. Or, oh, it's a silent K or whatever. All those rules were these little exceptions. And what I was discovering as I was trying so hard to do all this catch up was that it didn't make sense to me that there was always an exception. So again, if I'm in fifth position and I'm squeezing my thighs together and squeezing my thighs together, squeezing my thighs together, how is squeezing my thighs together supposed to allow me to kick my leg high to the side? They're opposite actions. And so it was like, okay, so if you want me to really feel myself crossing when I'm in fifth, great, but that can't be what creates the turnout, because I'm still turned out when my legs are flying apart from each other. So that's really where it all got started, to be honest, was that not even my artistic brain, but my logical brain was going, wait a second, hang on, I'm confused. And I so wanted brain to body to make sense. So I will say that was a positive. Unfortunately, I got into a habit for quite a while of brain to body, brain to body, brain to body. And then the next revelation of my teaching was when I could start to go body back up to brain. Mm-hmm. But in all honesty, I'm glad that happened, because again, it got me questioning the traditional things and the cues that might mean something to that dance teacher who's in a different relationship with their body than their young student, right? Where they go, well, that makes sense to me. Of course, I only do it here, but not there. And it's like, well, you didn't say that. Anyway, so I wound up having both roots, brain to body, body to brain, brain to body, body to brain. And that's kind of fueled me ever since, is that what's the intersection between the two? How does one inform the other, and back and forth? So it's never just a one-way street.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so in a
Yeah.
way, in a weird way, I'd say my whole route started by just questioning the traditions, and I've never stopped.
It's really interesting. And the way that you phrased it, between brain to body, body to brain, if you think about everything, the triangle of health is body, mind, emotions. They also say body, mind, and spirit. And so if you think about the dancer going brain to body or body to brain, it's like spirit sits on the outside of that, or emotion sits on the outside of that.
I love that you say that. So I could kind of say, oh, I'm going to my body through my heart center to my brain and back and forth. But you're absolutely right. I think, again, I like to think I don't do this, but a lot of the traditions are the old, if you love ballet, and that's why you're willing to do it and work so hard, that the spirit piece is just that you love it and that's enough. And that, find your way to express it, and love of dance. And it's like, well, actually, it's not a side piece, as you just said. It isn't separate. It really should be not down and up, but like, if you want then to say the circle of all of them intertwining, and to say the fuel of keeping that spirit and that love of it alive, and the spirit meaning the expression of your uniqueness. You want to keeping that alive. What does that look like within the typical dance class? And that's another piece that I've been, exploring right from the beginning, because, you come into it, let's say more seriously at 15, and especially when you're trying to make up for lost time, you go, this is harder than I thought it was. A lot of it, right? As a kid, I didn't really notice it was hard. I remember my thighs sort of burning working on glissades or something, but wasn't quite the same as like the determination when you get your point shoes or something, and you're going, I need my love of this to supersede everything. And then my love of just the need to express myself physically versus verbally. Actually, that reminds me, because we're around the holidays. So my strongest memories, even before I went back to dance at 15, was dancing in the living room to the Nutcracker music and just putting it on and just improvising for like an hour and a half.
Right.
Yeah, loving it. Yes. And having it in the evening, and my reflection in the in the window there, so I could see myself a little bit. But it was about pretending I had an audience, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I was the same too, because I was the deck windows went all the way across the kitchen. So I'd move all the furniture out of the kitchen, so I had my nice big space and catch that reflection. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And to see how beautiful things are, because it does fuel the soul. I'm going to say soul instead of just ego, when sometimes you look, in your reflection in the window there and go, that's me. And that's just a beautiful line or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So body, mind, spirit, I had my own dance studio for 10 years, and it was called Prism Dance Center. And I liked the idea of the prism of, coming in the white light and transforming to all the different things, so all the different dance genres, and also maybe it going the reverse, right? That all those pieces come together. So prism, and then the transforming the mind and body. And I didn't have the guts when I opened it in 1999 to have said transforming the mind, body, and spirit. But that's really was the ethos all along. I just didn't think that the average mom signing up her 5-year-old was quite ready for that. And
Exactly.
I even had a big pushback where I remember doing a marketing thing where I brought in some parents to, get some feedback. And one of them was like, what makes you think I want my child to transform? And why are you in charge of their transformation? And that was a bit of because the power of dance is there to transform.
Interesting, isn't it? And so then you wonder, when people start to think about it as similar to sports, which is a mechanical piece, they do have an artistry too. So I don't want to take away from that, but it is a mechanical piece, how you're going to swing the golf club, or how you're going to go up to hit the volleyball. But there is a transformation when you put a piece of music on, and especially when you're working with little people and you're giving them their favorite songs, they are transformed in that moment, and you don't want to take that away from them, because that's why they came to dance. And most parents of little people, the first thing they say when they go to sign their child up is that my child dances nonstop. I need you to take them because they won't stop dancing. And it's like, yes, but that's also the spirit. The spirit is within them to be able, they just want to move. They want to, like you said, feel what it feels like through the body to be able to embody this beautiful vessel we have while we're here. And what can we do with it? Yeah.
Anyway, so I do believe mind, body, spirit. And actually, so now the Prism Dance Center piece, I've got my 3 pillars of integrated, embodied, expressive. I'd say mind, integrated, body, embodied, and expressive is the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the tools to help each of those to be fully realized is what my goal is. And sometimes working with various people, like in the marketing thing, where they like, you have to niche it down. I'm like, I am not picking body. I'm not picking mind. I'm not picking spirit. They have to go together. And so they are going to go together. Sorry, it's all 3. Yeah. But, last time we were talking about change and whatnot, there's certainly everybody's going to be unique about which of those inroads is where they want to first start. Do they want to first just become more embodied? Even if I believe we need to start with integration, that might not be where they want to start. Or do they just want to help themselves or their students to be more expressive? Okay, start there. I still think ultimately, if they work with me long enough, they'll go back to da-da-da-da-da-da. But by having those 3 things articulated, people have those inroads at the 3 different places that whatever's right for you about where you are on your journey. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I'm not niching down. It's got to be all 3.
Yeah. No, I agree too. And it's the exploration back and forth between them that just makes you understand yourself so much better, understand your body so much better, and to listen to your body, that's the other thing, with standing at the bar, putting things into a position. And like you said, having this dichotomy going on of this isn't working. I don't know how to figure this out. But then to be able to find the way to just open that up and be expressive in that space. And yeah. Okay, I'm going to leave that because you and I could go down that rabbit hole for a long time. Just, and just the inspiration of having watched so many little people come through and find their journey and their voice. And that's, again, the T, right? We find that heart space and then being able to be confident to be able to get that voice out there. So, okay, let's shift ourselves to you as an educator being empowered with self-care for your students. Because as you've discovered all of the tools that help to integrate, help to bring that body awareness come forward, it's a self-care piece that has not really been talked about. I mean, they talk about being safe in movement patterns, but not as self-care. So do you want to talk about how you've been empowered by coming from this perspective as an educator?
You mean empowered like for just myself or with my student or for my students?
With your well, you can talk about yourself because you came from having that injury that you had to overcome, but then what that does for the students too, we can move into that as well.
Yeah, okay. Self-care to me is all about having fine-tuned awareness and noticing skills, right? Where I'm so in my body. It's like, it wasn't my book, it was my sister's book, but I remember reading it many times, and then putting it back in her bedroom. The Princess and the Pea. You know that story? Mm-hmm. There's that little pea, for people who don't know it. And she's just so sensitive that, no, I can feel it. I don't know why nobody thought to remove the pea, but anyway, they didn't. And so I'll put another mattress and another mattress and all that. And, so she's now lying on 20 mattresses, but she can still feel the little pea that's down below. And there's something that spoke about that story to me, because I always felt like I was a really sensitive kid, sensitive emotionally, sensitive physically, red hair, sensitive skin, blah, 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 all these things where I just always felt sensitive. And for a long time, it was sort of deemed as a negative. I'm sure any of us sensitive folks out there have heard, like, don't be so sensitive, or you're overly sensitive. Well, I don't actually think there's anything, I don't actually think you can be overly sensitive. Not when it comes to feeling what's in your body. I mean, don't you want to feel what's going on in your body? So that if you're going down a path where, oh, my knee feels a bit weird when I do that. Boom. Well, then don't keep doing it. It's your body saying, please don't do it that way. So because I started out so sensitive, I would say the best self-care is to just continually heightening that. And then, of course, being curious about that. So much of what I've studied has been what is a healthy, appropriate sensation of muscle fatigue or that fascial line stretching, and that's not normal joint function. It's not going to feel, it ideally wouldn't feel like that and all. So it's actually driven most of my education, is to be how to know to be sensitive in a way that's informing instead of confusing, that's informing me on what and how to move forward instead of just stop moving, because the stop moving was never really an option for me. Because I wanted it. And also, when it's your career and your job all the time, not moving is not an option. Right. So it became, self-care is, I listen to my body because it's always telling the truth. Right.
Yes.
And then to be able to listen and go, but what truth is it? Is it a bias that I have? And this is one I had for a long time. When I was still going brain to body, before I got into more of body brain cycling, I had a lot of sort of holding and freezing patterns to thaw out because I was so prepared for it to be hard work. So the squeezing and the holding and the gripping and the tension and all that does not feel the same as just a muscle working or a muscle stabilizing you. But it took a long time to find the difference between those sensations. So I'd say my self-care was noticing, listening, and trusting, and then constant inquiring education, so that I could try to see if that's a stabilization on that side. No, that's a gripping. Oh, that's stable. How do they feel different? And then, of course, my big thing would be then, what's my inner language that becomes my outer language, to try to guide my students the same way. And I've just really, imagery's been something I've loved all along. And then a lot of studying imagery. Shout out to the Franklin method. If you love imagery, functional anatomy, really, truly understanding how the body works. And that's actually been, I think, probably the biggest piece for self-care, is the blending of intuition, trust, and self-knowledge with education. That intersection is what gives you the power to know that you're doing the right thing, because yes, I'm feeling it and I know it's this, and therefore I carry on, or I've made a change. And I'll be honest, and not every dance teacher is going to love to hear this, but I'm getting my voice. A lot of dance teachers, we make it through our dance training with some anatomy, which means we just know how to name a bunch of body parts. That's usually the extent of it. There's not a lot of knowledge about the kinetic chains and the flow and the connection of things through the body. I think there's a lot of dance teachers who are really good at articulating how to do a certain movement and step, but not understanding how it's really going to feel in the body when it's honoring how the body is designed to move. I do not think that education is as broadly stroked across the industry as I believe it, quite frankly, needs to be. Because every time there's more teachers out there teaching in a way that was safe for myself, where I got the tension and the gripping and the holding because I was so willing to work hard, and that's the visuals I got, that's the cueing I got. then we're just perpetuating it, and another generation comes along that gets all these chronic injuries, or worse yet, drops out of dance because it doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going against the body, why should it feel good?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So being sensitive, like, let your sensitive flag fly, everybody. Like, come on, listen. It's, and I would say that again, big statements, but why not? That's what we're here for, right? I think that the more sensitive we are, like, I'm feeling not like immune, but that I don't think I'm ever going to get sick in a way, like a really bad illness, without having it caught soon. Because I know I'm feeling, I know I'm listening. I will not let it get so far down the road. Ignore, or maybe not even ignoring. Didn't notice. And then suddenly there's a problem. I mean, wouldn't we all be healthier if, oh, you're going down the wrong road, but it's, like stage 1, and I just steer the other way, rather than I didn't notice. And now, anyway, so that's sort of a diversion, but my point is that self-care to me is beyond the dance studio and the dance stage. It's, what you're feeling, get some information to interpret it. And then you're your own advocate in the dance class, on stage, in life, going to the doctor. All of it is that intersection of those two. And that I feel pretty strongly about. And I think that the dance world could do more, because if this is our home, if our bodies are home, teaching people to understand and be in their home, that's what changes the world, in my opinion. Because then we're not looking outside ourselves. We're not trying to have the power and control over others. We're at home in our home. We're empowered in our home, and we know how to advocate for ourselves. The world would be a better place. So I no longer, those days of looking in my front window to see how beautiful the arabesque looks. Now I only occasionally peek. It's not really what's of interest to me anymore, of what it looks like. It's more, what does it feel like?
Mm-hmm.
How does it feel? How does it feel, me as the dancer? And then I talk a lot with my students of, if you're being an observer, so, switching it where, half is observing, half is doing. Are you getting a feeling? Are they breaking through to your heart and your sense of feeling something when you are the observer? And I can only feel something when you're feeling something. And therefore, can we not just make it about the look anymore? So anyway, so all of that self-care, it's not about the looks, it's about the feeling, supported with knowledge. That's my nutshelled it in. And I saw you nodding. So yeah. Well, like, page here, right?
For people listening, you might have to go back and listen. There were so many nuggets in that. So many nuggets in there, and I had so many wonderful thoughts of what you were saying. So it's just so beautiful. I'm going to go with the last piece that you said, though, which it just spurred something in me, which is from therapeutic touch. We have triad pieces where you can have a person who, they call them the healee, and then you have the healer. So the person that's going to be able to sweep the hands through the field and help the person to calm and relax. But we also have triads where we have an observer. And it never occurred to me before that really is like watching the performance. And there's two ways of watching the performance. So you can just sit and be entertained and, hope that people are going to send that to you, which is that dancing from the heart, because you're trying to get that person watching to feel what you're trying to express. The other part of that is not to just expect to just receive, and that by you holding the space of the beauty of what can transpire, you provide that impetus for the performer to be able to easily release what they want to share, which is not where we wanted to go, but it is really interesting because it does then create that partnership between audience and performer. And I think when you're talking about dance education and instruction in a studio setting, that's not there. That whole performance piece is missing that third observer. The instructor might be the observer, but if they are holding the framework of critiquing and helping everybody to be better, there's also that time of just being present and holding the space for expression to come through and
Yes.
to feel that emotional piece. And I'm thinking about how much time is spent on technique and how much time is actually spent on expression, where the observer is there for just the expression part.
You know, you're absolutely right that it's not done a lot. I think it tends to get done at the very, very end, like just before performance. But one of the things, you know, I don't write out a lot of class plans anymore now, honestly, because I trust that I'm just in my flow. But in the beginning, I did. And there was a good time period there where I would scroll across my page, just shut up and watch. Because I'm a talker. I'm sure nobody's surprised. But you got to know that about yourself. And if I was always watching about what am I going to say, first of all, like charting all the things I'm going to say when they're done, or just saying it right in the moment, means I'm not in the same observing, and I'm in my thinking space. I'm not in my feeling space. And so I'm quite good now at shutting up and watching. I do a lot of guest teaching, so it actually works to just sit. You know, I've given them whatever, and even it's just the plies, and I'll just sit and watch, and I'll just have no judgment, no expectation. I'll just let it wash over me what I'm seeing, but most importantly, what am I feeling, or maybe not feeling, like that they're just all mechanically doing it. And then I speak from what I felt rather than even what I saw. And you can tell for a lot of these students that space of being in studio, truly just being watched from that place, is pretty foreign to them. They're so used to it being, I'm doing my performance and then I'm just going to wait. And it's almost like braced and waiting for the critique. So it's like, I'll give, and then I'll give, rather than just I'll give. And I can tell that it was absorbed. Oh, and then it's a different exchange. Actually recently I got to work with some students that were quite advanced. And I did just that. I just like let it absorb. And then my honest question was to them, like, do you girls have to do ballet? Like, is it mandatory for you to do your contemporary, your lyrical and jazz? If you want to do competition, yeah. Like, do you love ballet? And everybody's squirming and looking uncomfortable. And I was like, it's okay if you don't, even though I'm your ballet teacher right now. And that was what our goal was then when we spent our time together, was how can we have the feeling piece be of prime importance to you when you're dancing? And how can that fuel and support your technique rather than technique? Oh yeah, don't forget to feel. Remember to smile. And so just flipping it. But I think if I hadn't just shut up and watched and let myself feel, I don't think I would have, maybe I never would have noticed that. I would have just immediately made a list of 5 technical things we're going to work on today. And that's what they get all the time. Is it important? Yes. But it's not the whole only thing. And I think we need to, as teachers and dancers, constantly be cycling through our priorities to make sure we never get stuck on one to the exclusion of the others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So so I love that idea that obviously you could bring in observers. Maybe the parents come and pick up 5 minutes early and come into the room and watch, or you do a show and tell between classes. But for the teacher hat to also take off their teacher hat moment and be an audience member. Every class, be an audience member. That I would say is part of your job. Be an audience member 5 minutes even out of every class. And what would that bring to you as a better educator? And maybe even fill your cup a little bit, right? That's a self-care piece. So I don't have to be in my thinking brain the whole time. Maybe I can be in my feeling brain. and know that that's also a gift to the students. So it's not like you didn't teach for that 5 minutes. You filled yourself up and gave them a really important experience at the same time. So.
Mm-hmm. And you also mentioned within this last little piece there was that tension of performance to get the technique correct, and then not being able to feel, and then what happens to the breath, and then the tension that happens. And I'm thinking about everyday self-care for people, and particularly for adults, how much time is spent in that frozen state because it's the awareness that they know. They don't know the awareness of not being in that state. And is it comfortable to be able to relax into it and bring flow to something? Then it could mean you didn't do enough on a project. You didn't give 100%. And that idea of self-care being understanding the flow rather than understanding the tension.
I think that's a brilliant piece. I think there's a lot of people who they only feel good when they're in the familiar state, right? And the familiar state could be full of tension, but if they never feel anything different, then if there is a time where they manage to get into a flow state, and actually over the holidays can be it, right? That flow state that perhaps you and I both love so much, to them might feel vulnerable because it doesn't have that bracing as well. And, you know, I remember actually my sister reminded me of this recently, because one of the things that was my life for sure through high school in particular was every holiday, Christmas for sure, but, you know, Easter, spring break, whatever, I would get sick. And it's not like I'm around all the sick other people at school, maybe just at home, but it would be like the body just go, and let's go for a moment, and boom, suddenly I can deal with all the stuff. And I think that's really common, but that also tells you like, oh my God, are you bracing through your life most of the time?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And sad but true, I think many of us are. So that would be one other piece I'll again share for the dance educators out there, realizing that, you know, if you make these changes, guess what? You're unplugging your students from the stress response that is healthy, and you've got to know that that's healthy, but it's also could be very foreign to them, very uncomfortable. And I mean, stress is chemicals that we feel, right? And people can be quite addicted to their stress chemicals, and when they're not there, they really miss them. And so I will admit that I've had some pushback with, say, teen students, you know, where they're like, but you're not yelling at us and you're not, and it's like, well, like, you want me to, you know, but they do, they want that. They think it's external motivation from a positive sense, but what it is it's triggering them to have the adrenaline and stress chemicals, and they're using that as their fuel, which can cycle all back to going, how about your own spirit and love of it being your fuel, not the stress chemicals? You know, you jump high because it's fun, not because your teacher just yelled at you and spooked you into jumping high. Anyway, yeah. So
yeah, that is just such an incredible point for all educators, and even parenting, because parenting has changed so much in the last couple of decades. And giving children the opportunity to understand something before action, and rather than, you know, saying you did that wrong, talking about how it could be helpful to look at something a different way. And when you bring that into the dance setting, it does bring some chaos into the room, because there's a lot more time spent on expression and openness. But that opportunity, I always found when I did that, there was the kids were just so pumped with their ideas and their voice of what they could do. And that completely changed how the room worked. And that was always my highlight.
yeah, I love that moment too. Well, I think we brought it up last time, you know, that if you want change, there's going to be some chaos. If you want the voices of your students to be heard, okay, fine, physically, if we're talking dance, but often there's through this verbal piece to get there, to sort of feel like you opened the tap up. Or even if it is remaining only physical, when you really let them release it, the energy in the room just boom, and can start to zing and bebop and pop all over the place. Personally, I love that feeling. I don't, and maybe it's because of the self-care that I do. I don't feel like I'm being caught up in a storm. I feel like I'm the center, the eye of the storm, while they're all just around me, and it doesn't destabilize me. So that actually would be maybe a good piece of self-care, is to just realize, are you centered before you enter? Are you centered before you enter the arena? Because there's about to be chaos. If there's going to be real learning, there's going to be some chaos. If there's going to be real artistry getting developed, there's going to be some of that energy all around, the competing energy, because everybody's voice is different. So if you want to go and just be in charge all the time, and not have to manage the energy, you feel like you're just managing the bodies, I would say, well, fine, maybe they're getting well trained, air quotes for people only listening, trained, which I would also say well contained, but is being contained developing the artist. And I think that's a piece that's really interesting. And I think there's more and more discussion all the time in the dance world between, when am I training the physical? When are those body parts getting worked and stretched and strengthened and all that? And when am I training the artist? And they're very separated at the moment. And there's more people getting more entrenched in the separation all the time. And I'm getting more and more interested in the fact that they can happen concurrently. So the more they get separated, the more I'm actually fighting back and saying, but wait a minute, can't they come together? Because we want all that strength and flexibility and artistry at the same time on stage. So why are we separating them even in the training? But that's.
Yes. And I think that goes back to what you said a little bit earlier, with training also being about isolating the pieces and then not understanding how the whole movement actually looks. And I find the same thing with bioenergetic wellness facilitators. They're great at being able to turn muscles on, bring everything in, have a person come off of the massage table and ready to go out the door. Everything's functioning and working, but they actually don't know what it feels like to function and work in that wholeness, because they've been, functioning with those isolated pieces, or lack of integration between brain and body, or body back to brain. And you set them up, but now they need to do something to move, to actually figure out, what does it mean to me? And how does that movement then help me get in and out of the car or to go back to work? And that piece too, I see in the regular world, is just missing such a huge portion of who people are. And so, this conversation, to be able to bring around those melding pieces, if we had the melding right from the beginning, we didn't break it apart. But I guess that's that very first dance class, right? Here's how you shuffle your foot, or here's how you move your arms. But there isn't that come in and express yourself.
I guess, I'm glad we're having this discussion, because I think that's an interesting piece. It's all right to teach details. One of the things that I've learned in my pedagogy, again, thank you to Bill Evans, Don Halquist, make sure I'm shouting out to them, and understanding even from Brain Gym. I feel like I'm teaching Brain Gym method of saying, I do right brain, left brain, right brain. Give them a big picture, then fill in some details and integrate it back to the big picture. And I think a lot of times we don't do the big picture context. We just do the details, and there's an assumption, and it's a false assumption, that the details will filter in and find their way into the big picture. And I don't think that often happens. We kind of go, I have my big picture. How is it that I've done all this work on all these details? I've taken all these classes, I've done all, and yet it's not penetrating like the big picture that is your life. It's like, well, because you didn't integrate them together. So that's just, that's a big dance teaching thing, but isn't that just a big life thing of going, every time you learn something new, how is it changing you? And everything. And the image I often give to students, and I can tell that they get it, is I'm like, just imagine you're in science class and you've got your little beaker of water. And this is, you know, a little drop of green or something, little green food dye. And I put one little drop in. It's going to maybe take a bit of time, but eventually it's going to permeate the entire beaker of water. And now it's a slightly different color. So what's that little drop, that little detail that you just learned? And how is that going to change everything? Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is I feel like, I mean, pontificating here a little bit, but I think that people feel that when everything changes, that's destabilizing. I think it's the fight between the things that want to be integrated and want to help change and aren't. I think that the push and pull is actually what is destabilizing. Mm-hmm. The permeation of all your bits. Like, can we just trust that we're going to sort it out and it will not destabilize us? It's actually just going to keep growing and changing us, but in a wonderful way. And yeah, so that's another piece of trust, I guess. And those of us doing brain gym and trusting that we're integrated enough that it's going to happen. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So, and I will say in my Tai Chi classes, if all of a sudden everything goes to chaos in your body and you cannot coordinate a movement you've been doing for a long time, we found something.
Yes.
And the fact that we found it means stick with it because it needs that opportunity to integrate. And all of a sudden it's going to come in and you're going to feel like the move was always there. And Absolutely. It happens every time.
Well, yeah. So senior dancers, you know, and dance teachers, if you happen to listen to this, if you try something new on your pirouettes may fall apart for a little while. And then once they come back, they're going to come back better and stronger. And so, yeah, a lot of times, I teach something new and I'm like, that's it. And then they look at me and go, but I'm like, I'm thrilled that you completely forgot how to do your Tondo exercise you've been doing for 3 months. I love that. You were addressing something else. Don't worry about it. It will come back. And then, we do it even 1 or 2 more times and suddenly it's there. Like the fall apart isn't as long or as scary as people think it is, but it's a very common and necessary piece. We're very similar. When I see a kid mess up an exercise they know really well, I get excited because I know they just tried something new. They just tried implementing a new idea. And isn't that exciting?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that needs to change in the dance world, right? That feeling that if I'm always performing and being judged by my dance teacher at all times, that every time I'm learning something new, everything was good. I layered on it, got a bit better. I layered on it, got a bit better. And that it's only a layering process, that we're always being perfect, but adding a new layer. It's like, that is not how it works. Mm-hmm. Not real learning anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then if you've stacked it like that, try taking that apart, right? Oh. There's a lot of layers in there that are all based on this foundational piece that was incorrect to begin with, but you managed to make it all work. And now how are you going to get through that?
It's like Jenga. We'd go, okay, sorry, we got to remove the bottom piece and boom, it all falls apart. And that could be why there's dancers that, 15, 16 injuries, chronic injuries are showing up. They're getting frustrated. The spirit isn't being fueled. And then something happens. Maybe their own maturity happens where they realize that if I really want to make a huge difference and really get progress again, I'm going to have to remove a foundational piece. And knowing that it's all going to fall apart, they just go, screw it. I'm walking away. I can't handle that.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Now we've gone down that rabbit hole of lovely stuff. Because, it's really symbolic of life. Chaos before you get to the rewards. But if we take that to the idea of you're at the start of I'll say start. You've been having conversations for a long time. There's many of us who've been working in the bioenergetic wellness world trying to have conversations into sports and dance. And you're at the place where ears are listening, pieces are starting to change. There's a shift in how things are going to come through. Do you want to talk about how you then unroll that piece just based on what we've just talked about, because there's a lot there. How does that unrolling look, and what does it mean for the educator and the excitement it creates?
Ooh, that's a big question. What does it look like? I think for me, I like to think that a lot of the chaos before the change that was personal of trying to find my voice and how I fit into a big picture. I like to think that that's nearing its completion and that the big picture pieces are starting to be integrated and creating a new big picture, new life for myself. But then it makes me very aware then that once I'm getting this vehicle and this voice to be sharing all these ideas more and more, and I'm feeling more stable in it, a big piece for me is going to be remembering what I went through making all this type of change and being very aware of the gentleness and the need to keep teachers, if they're the ones I'm teaching, or students, feeling safe while they're trying to implement some changes. So when you say roll out, how to roll it out, like by that, I'm assuming you mean like sharing that on the broader scale in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think a big piece would be again, I've struggled with it because details, big piece, details, big piece.
Mm-hmm.
So if I simply make sure that I'm always sharing with people that there's a big piece, but then my offer for consumption, if you will, is little details that they can then take that little piece and see how it integrates. And what I had been doing previously was trying to make all these courses that are these big, huge, big picture courses. And that's maybe too much too soon, indigestible. And that what's better is, I started to make smaller courses, and now my rollout coming up will be mini courses, mini courses, where I'm addressing one sort of pain point, if you will, for an educator or a dancer, but with some of these new ideas. So they just have one little idea. They can take just a 2-hour workshop on that rather than here's all my ideas and isn't it overwhelming? Have at it. Rather than me saying, here, pick what you want out of this huge big pie. Now I'm going, here's some slivers of the pie and trust that you will pick the one that you feel like you need most, but that it will be just enough. You know what? There you go. It's the food coloring. If I go back to that image, here's the red drop, the blue drop, the green drop, instead of here's all of them already mixed all together, poured in, right? Because that's just too much. So I've had to, honestly, it feels like I've had to dial back my excitement of trying to get people all the way there right away. And remembering as an educator, I know that that's not possible anyway, so why was I even trying? And to just realize that this is going to take time, that this is a process, and it's going to take time for people to want to have that little drop and that little drop and that little drop, and that each little drop, they'll try it, hopefully integrate it into their own lives in a way that feels safe and feels like a truth to them, because they're going to have a body wisdom and an intuition and a knowing and all that, and as well as the basic information education that maybe I don't have, and they're going to be able to tweak it and change it themselves to make it right for them. And the part that I'm actually really excited about, I even have a meeting later today, is how to take my little pieces that I believe in, but now to start to collaborate with other people about what little pieces they would bring in, so that my stuff and their stuff is creating a new whole as well. So rolling forward, I think the biggest piece that I can be doing is the micro, the mini, all that stuff, and a lot more collaborations with other people, so that the fusing of our materials together creates something new, which is great for both of us, but also might make it that much easier for digestion for somebody here. So working with a musician, working with somebody who is doing the imagery for the dance, working with somebody who does the conditioning for dance. Wouldn't it be great if the people who do all the conditioning programs used a little bit more of kinetic chains? But maybe there's pieces about conditioning that I can use more too, and that we just start blending. Rather than everybody in their own lane. If we really want to walk our talk, all of us need to be blending more. Because,
Yeah.
So just as I would say, I don't want to teach your feet to work in isolation. My biggest thing about the rollout now is, why do I think I should be working in isolation? I'm not a foot. Right? I'm not a foot. I'm not just a pinky finger in the dance education. Can we all just, it's the wholeness of it all. That's what I think is my piece rolling out, that's different. It's kind of weird, hey, that the mistakes that I made in my body, and then switched around, I've almost been made similar mistakes in sort of how to educate and market these new ideas. Oh,
Interesting, isn't it? And then you think about too, if somebody has a syllabus, and it's always exciting from a marketing perspective to unroll the new syllabus, right? But that puts everybody into chaos, because you've taken and you've moved so many parts around. They don't know where exactly to stand. And I know for me, having coming through the pandemic, I stopped teaching, and now I go to teach, and I'm like, I don't know, because I don't believe in the way I was teaching. I want to do more of the other things, but now I don't know where I actually sit. And so it becomes difficult. So I really appreciate the idea of, how do we make those small changes that are going to be very impactful changes, and then see where they come out. Because we do know what potential we can make off of working with a foot reflex, as an example, how that can change posture and function and dance and expression, all from that one little change. But then what does that mean to the whole syllabus? What does it mean to the whole performer?
I went out for a dinner, gosh, it was probably almost 10 years ago now, with a lady, a former Russian ballerina, actually, and I was subbing at her studio, and we went out for dinner after, and she was a fan. Her English wasn't fantastic, so it took me a little moment to really understand what she was saying, which was good, because I really had to really listen, right? And she was kind of like, but you don't have to teach everything at once. And so, like 10 years ago, I got the old, because for me, as the guest teacher, sub teacher, all that sort of thing, I get so excited about giving so many things that it's like, I can't learn. If I was a student, I can't learn 30 new ideas, as exciting and as connected as they all are. What if you gave me 3 and we went a little deeper on each one, and you helped me to apply it to everything? That it's okay. Yeah. So if you're wanting to make a change in your teaching, like you were just saying, it's okay to do 1 or 2 things differently and let that permeate through. Because guess what? That's enough change maybe for you, and that might also be enough change for your students. So to not try to teach everything all at once. And you look at, maybe I've just had the image of a buffet, right? And then we all go to the buffet and we look and we're like, oh, I'm completely overwhelmed. And then sometimes people go and just stuff themselves. And ultimately it's like, well, did you enjoy it? Because now you're just saying, oh, that half an hour eating might have tasted good, but now you feel horrible. So we just, So I think that when you say how you're rolling things out, using the roll, I feel like the biggest thing I can be doing for myself and to be effective in the education is to slow my roll and just be gentle, little bit, whole integrate, little bit. How does it all integrate? And I don't think I'm there fully naturally because of excitement. And right now I'm at an excited place where people are starting to listen. And so it's like, oh, well, what can you offer? And I'm like, and even now, so I'm talking to myself, I'm listening to myself right now. Maybe I offer them only 3 or 4 of my key workshops. I don't offer them the 20 that I think I could do, because that's
Yeah.
overwhelming.
Yeah. 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 Very true. Wow. Okay. So,
That's how I'm going to slow my role as part of self-care for myself and everybody else.
mhm,
No need to overwhelm myself or anybody else,
mhm,
because the learning won't take place anyway. So,
mhm.
yeah.
So I know we're coming up to the top of the hour. We might have hit it already. One of the things that I did before we started this conversation was take out my harmony coasters. And the harmony coasters, for those people listening who've not heard about them, they are images. There's 11 images that help people walk through from the start of a situation to where they want to finish. So it could be a trauma and trying to resolve it, building resiliency. But it for me, I often use it for conversations to kind of figure out where are we going to be in this conversation, so I know what kind of input is being sought after. And it's really been insightful when I'm having different meetings, because I might think we're back at the beginning and creating something, and it ends up we're not. We're actually almost finished. We just need to tweak a couple things. But what I pulled the card for today was, and I wasn't going to bring it up, but I think it sits right here perfectly, because it was the guides that we have that support our journey of discovery. And so we have these dancers who've gone before us, who've had all of their input, the way they were educated, their experiences on stage, and the influence of their knowledge and legendary things that have happened. So if you were thinking about some of those prima ballerinas who had long careers but ended up with some injuries that that really plagued them in their later years, how do you think they might be looking at these new ideas coming in and what that would mean for that next generation of dancers?
That's a wonderful question. Well, I'm sure any ballerina or danseur whose career was shorter than they wished, thanks to a chronic injury, would of course wish to have a do-over, right? And to have had information delivered in such a way that they didn't go down that road. I'm a real believer in, we get misuse injuries, not overuse. Like, the body is so resilient that if we're using it properly, it doesn't get overused. But if you're a hair, and it can be just a hair offline, and turnout's a big one for perhaps making that happen, then it's not able to function optimally, and boom, it feels like overuse. Now, it was misuse. It was misused by a tiny bit, but it was still misuse. So I think they would love the power of the knowledge to be able to sense and not just be obedient of, like, here's my end goal, so no matter what pain I have to go through to get there, I'll just do it. I'm sure they would all want to have a do-over, even if it was like, you're going to achieve your technical level a year later. You're going to be amazing at 19, not 18. But now you'll get 10 more years of a career. I'm sure they would all choose that. Almost like the tortoise and the hare story, it's like the slow and steady progress. Like, so I'm sure they'd all would want that for themselves. Maybe there's the odd ego out there of like, well, I had to suffer for my art, so everybody else should too. It's what makes us real artists. I think we can all agree that that's baloney, and we need to move away from the suffer for your art stuff. To me, suffer for your art would mean showing up even when it's hard and when it feels really vulnerable. That to me is suffer for your art. But I don't know that I'd use the word suffer. But I do also want to point out one of the stories that one of my main teachers, Bill Evans, points out. And I'm not going to name who the ballerina was, but I believe it was a Balanchine ballerina. And he was working with her. And she just had such a natural kinesthetic sense that were musicality and fluidity, all these things, how to reach great heights, and I believe injury free. And so he must have asked her, sort of what point, well, what were you told? And she's like, oh, at 12, I stopped listening to my teachers and just listened to the music. And you're like, wow, can you imagine hearing that as being one of her teachers through her teens and going, what? You stopped listening? It's like, yeah, because sometimes the teacher's voice was obviously in her way. And she goes, if I listen to the music and just want to be expressive, I've got enough training and I trust my body's wisdom and flow and kinetic sense. And she's one of the most well-known gorgeous ballerinas who stopped listening to her teachers, just listen to the music. Mm-hmm. What I think would be amazing, though, is if we could listen to the music and listen to our teachers, because our teachers are guiding us to go into that listening of the flow through our body and how it really works. I mean, that's the real gift, right? Is if you're a teacher and you know that everything that you say they're absorbing in a way that's helping them and accelerating and supporting their process instead of being to ignoring. So, yeah, I don't know. Did that answer your question? I'm sure they'd all.
Yeah.
In any of the educators that are considered pioneers, I've had this discussion with many before where they're like, oh, well, they didn't do it that way. And it's like, yeah, well, they created that idea 100 years ago. They were pioneers then. What makes you think that now, with the information that we have now, that they wouldn't embrace those same pioneering ideals? Of course they would. A pioneer 100 years ago probably has the pioneering spirit that with the same type of knowledge that's available to us now, they'd be on board. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Think of, say, like the power of visualization or something that's been so well researched, for athletes and whatnot. Would they be using that? Of course they would. Of course they would. They might not have been the pioneering researchers on those things. They might have stayed in their lane, but they would have gathered from all sources. I'm sure the pioneers 200 years ago would have been at home Googling things constantly, that they wanted information. That's what makes a pioneer. You want information and you want to combine it, something new, pull the threads together and share it so therefore what that means is I don't actually believe in following the traditions of the past in order to pay homage to what they created. I pay homage to the fact that they were pioneers, knowing that they would want it to evolve.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that an interesting idea? And for all the things that we hold on to because it's always been that way.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
That got good results for so-and-so, so it's going to get good results for everybody else down the line. Not necessarily
right.
true. Yeah.
Well, I mean, isn't it well known that Martha Graham started doing her style of all the full body contractions because she had proportions that weren't right for ballet? She had such a long torso. She's like, I'm going to just start using my torso more because and it's like, well, but that was her body. She worked the best she could with her body. It doesn't mean every person's body is naturally for that. Anyway,
Yeah.
There's the individuals, and then there's common sense of what's just intelligent teaching and intelligent movement. So,
I really appreciate
evolution. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I just appreciate the idea that a pioneer was wanting to pioneer and was open to that expression, and how in so many ways we try to go back, even as we've been working on the Cape Breton square sets and bringing back the traditional sets and understanding how they were put together as a 4-couple set. But the inspiring part that happened at the last dance was when we let go of everything and said, this pattern is really cool. What if we did? And we started switching things around, and the kids came to life that had come. And otherwise they were like, yes, we're here for the instruction. And then it was like, well, we need to move this with a fuller skirt. So what happens? And they were so inspired. So yeah, tradition has its place, but so does the spirit of helping things grow.
I think it was really fascinating. When I said I started late into the ballet, one of the syllabus I did was still RAD, but it was called Dance Education Syllabus. And it was historical. So it was a very romantic based syllabus. And we were doing, in particular, our arms. So like instead of fifth position being up here, it was out here, because they would have had whalebone corsets and elastic wasn't invented yet. So they actually physically couldn't get their arms there. It had nothing to do with this is fifth position. It's like, this is the fifth position that we can do. So if I'm going to completely honor and respect romantic ballet, maybe I'll show that. And same thing, second position wasn't as high and all that. It's like, but that doesn't mean that that's what I need to do forever. Anyway, so I'm actually kind of glad that I got that training right in the beginning, where it was, these are traditions, but there was a reason that it was like that, and it's now evolved. So yeah, I believe that we need to just keep evolving. That refreshes what keeps us excited. I think the evolving is what makes the spirit excited, because we're here to, I think, expand as spirits. So yeah.
Wow.
Boy, good thing we had our tea with us too.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, for people that might not have listened to the first podcast that we did, which was episode 19 of season 4, in case you want to go back and hear what we talked about the first time, do you want to share how people can find you?
Yes. So I have a YouTube channel, The Radiant Dance Teacher, that you can, there's almost 100 videos there, lots of things you can check out there. I have a private Facebook group, The Radiant Dance Teacher. You just have to request to join and fill in the little submission bits. I also have Radiant Dancer, YouTube and Facebook group. And even the third one, Living an Embodied Life, which is for the non-dancers, where this movement education piece would still be for you. So that in the YouTube, and it's a public Facebook group, and a website of radiantdancer.com. And in that, it kind of can spread out whether you're a dancer, dance teacher, and even some of the Living an Embodied Life materials are there too. So you can find me all those different ways. And I'm, maybe by the end of the holidays, active on Instagram and, dare I say, maybe TikTok. I've been avoiding it, but I think the dancers who need this information are probably only going to find me on TikTok. So I'll be there eventually too. Maybe it depends on how soon you publish this as to whether I'm on Instagram and TikTok as well, but I'm getting there. Time to share my voice, yes. Right? On a broader scale. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the website's the best way, radiantdancer.com, because you can email me through there if you've got questions or want to reach out, because I am looking for people who want to collaborate in some ways.
Beautiful. Awesome. Oh, Mariah-Jane, thank you so much for coming back to have this conversation, and for being vulnerable to do that deep dive, because you are pioneering, and it's a different way of pioneering than has been in the past, which is, you're right, isolated. Here's my idea. And we all have amazing ideas and want to be heard. So beautiful. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share these ideas. And because one of the big things is, in the act of sharing them, I get greater clarity as well. So I hope people listening start having discussions, because the more discussions about this sort of stuff, the greater clarity they may have, as well, about who you want to be as an educator, exactly, or mover, whoever you are listening, right?
Exactly. Awesome.
You're doing a wonderful thing. Thank you, Michelle, for sharing all this.
All right. For those people listening, thank you so much for being here. Please go back and check out some of the episodes that have come before this one, and have a fabulous day. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Be Well with Dr. Michelle Greenwell. There are a couple of resources I want to just point out. When you go to the website greenwellcenter.com, you'll have a pop-up window. That pop-up gives you the top 8 easy stress releasers that you can use every day. That's something you can put beside your computer, the bathroom mirror, beside the bedside table. A great resource. Also, my YouTube channel. It is full of playlists with all kinds of different ways that you can activate energy and bring vitality into your day. You can find that when you go to YouTube at Michelle Greenwell. And last,
If you're a Linktree person, Linktree, linktr.ee/Greenwell Center. That has all my resources in one spot. Those are for intricate little things that you can't get everywhere. And it's a wonderful way for me to be able to share all the different aspects of the kind of work I do. So thank you for listening. Be sure to drink that tea. And if you want to have the tea blend that was shared in the podcast today, then be sure to check out capebretontea.ca. Have a wonderful day.